my first opportunity to have a lot of association with Srila Prabhupada and in private or privately was when I was his driver. And in those days, Sankirtan parties stayed out very late, and everyone was very engaged, and there was really a lot of activity, especially when we acquired that new building, which had been the Methodist church. And I was a Sankirtan leader, but also because not everyone had driving skills or licenses, I also was elected to be Prabhupada's chauffeur in the morning. And like I said, in those days, Sankirtan parties would come back at midnight or 1 a.m., and even later on the weekends, and our Sankirtan leader, the leader, was Vishnu Jana Maharaj, Vishnu Jana. And I came back, we would come back very late, and everyone would get up late too. But somehow I was elected to get up early, like at 5 o'clock, to be ready to promptly, like at 10 minutes to 6, get Prabhupada. We had those little Mavericks, white Mavericks. And for several months, I took Prabhupada alone on his walks. And sometimes, because no one got up early, only Prabhupada was getting up early in those days. And Murlidhar, the artist, got up early, because he didn't go out on the night Sankirtan. He painted. So I was the first person to see Prabhupada in the morning, and we'd go out. And then I really, what the devotees talk about, I got special attention or special consideration. And Prabhupada actually always, every day he would talk, he'd had something to talk about.
Up to that point, Prabhupada never said anything personally to me, except, you know, when he gave me my name in Chicago with a big initiation, and my Gayatri initiation in Vrindavan. So I went all the way, got there, got to the house, and Prabhupada was given darshan at the time. He was sitting in a room smaller than this room here. You know how the Indian houses are there. And he was sitting behind the coffee table. There was a screen door there, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj asked me to pass out sweets to the guests that left. The room was packed with people. And so I just got there, and here I am with a box of sweets at the door, and Prabhupada was just, you know, right there speaking. And so Prabhupada noticed someone outside, and I didn't think anybody else could fit in the room because they were all sitting like this, you know. The room was packed, and Prabhupada asked me to let him in. And so when I opened the door to let him in, another person went out the door at the same time he came in, and they kind of crossed, and I didn't give him prasadam. So Prabhupada asked me, "Did you give him prasadam?" And I said, "Well, no, Prabhupada, you know." And Prabhupada said, "This boy is incompetent." He turned to Tamal, and Tamal says, "All right, Gauridas, go downstairs and I'll talk to you later." Yeah. And so I thought, I'm finished, that's it. You know, I gave my whole life to Prabhupada, and I thought, I displeased the spiritual master, I'm going to get sent to Africa, back to Bombay. So the Ganges was right there, this house was on the bank of the Ganges. And I went down to the Ganges, and I was remembering Vishnu Jan Swami, the story about him. That's another one I can tell in a little bit. And so I was sitting there on a rock in the river, and I was thinking I should just drown myself right now. You know, I was crying. And about 20 minutes later, Tamal came down, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, and he kind of laughed. He said, "Gauridas, don't take it so seriously. Go up and clean Prabhupada's room." And I was surprised because I thought he was going to send me, and he had that authority to do that. And so I, you know, I washed my face and straightened my dhoti up, and went into Prabhupada's room, and it was just Prabhupada still sitting there, and Upendra was the only one there. And he gave me a broom, and he said, sweep the floor here. So I started sweeping, and I felt really like, really ashamed that I was such a fool. And but I felt like Prabhupada was looking at me. So I looked over at him, and he just smiled like anything. And I just went, wow, you know, all that anxiety just went, and Jai Prabhupada, and I started sweeping real fast.
I asked Srila Prabhupada for initiation, and he did the fire sacrifice, and there was Tushta Krishna and myself, and Tushta Krishna actually had come from Hawaii and was with Siddha Swarup at the time, and some of his followers had come to take initiation from Srila Prabhupada. And the fire sacrifice, after being done by Prabhupada, he gave us our names. And he named Tushta Krishna. He said, one who is satisfied with Krishna. And he gave me my name, and he said, Pushta Krishna, you are Pushta Krishna. Pushta means strength, one who gets strength from Krishna. And he was really amused, I think, by the names, Tushta Krishna and Pushta Krishna. And the next morning on the morning walk, he was very jubilant. And he looked at me and he said, Pushta Krishna. And I said to Srila Prabhupada, thank you for giving me a name. And then he became very grave. So I understood at that time that Srila Prabhupada could be a little bit unpredictable, and that one had to be grave in his presence, and I always tried to be.
Morning walks were one of the most relishable aspects of spending time with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada gave us access to spend time with him all day and into the night. But for me, in that early San Francisco period, I generally was one of the ones that wanted to be on that morning walk. And one of the early devotees and I used to get up at 2 in the morning and go to Golden Gate Park and pick flowers in Rhododendron Dell, make garlands for Srila Prabhupada, and then present them to Srila Prabhupada, go on the morning walk. It was in the park. And they were always very, very special moments for us, to walk next to your spiritual master, to try to chant Hare Krishna as he is chanting Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada was always chanting Hare Krishna. His hand was in his bead bag. If he was sitting in his rocking chair or behind his desk when he wasn't writing. So certainly the morning walks, they were japa walks, and he walked very briskly. Srila Prabhupada walked like a young man of 25. I remember I had wooden yogi shoes between the toes, and the first day I went for a walk with those shoes on, my feet bled because Prabhupada was just snapping right along very fast. Yeah, morning walks were glorious with Srila Prabhupada.
One morning we were driving. We always drove down Venice, and we always went to Santa Monica Beach. Once I told Prabhupada about La Brea, the tar pits, and we went over there, and he liked walking around there. But one morning, it's about 6 a.m., and not a lot of movement yet on the streets, and a biker who had a shaved head, looked like had a Harley chopper and everything. He was driving down Venice Boulevard, and he looked over and he looked in the car, and I had a shaved head and Prabhupada had a shaved head, and he had pretty much shaved head, and he looked like a gnarly biker, right? But all of a sudden he started staying with us, and then he went right behind us, and I was like a little concerned, you know. And he was kind of like singling with us and trying to communicate with us. He followed us all the way down to the beach. He parked behind us and came up and asked if he could walk with us, you know. And Prabhupada said yes. And Prabhupada talked to me, and the guy just walked along, and after about halfway through the walk, he turned around and left us. And I was, many times I found that certain situations were provoking or intimidating, but Prabhupada was so in control, and it rubbed off a little bit. I was like, oh, what's this guy going to do? And then Prabhupada was, yes, you may walk with us, please come. And he would stop, and he would stop as he would when he was walking, and he'd have his cane, and he'd look at you directly in the eyes, and he looked at that guy in the eyes also. And he was explaining about, when you were with Prabhupada on the oceans, then it was deep philosophy, it was intellectual, because the element, the gigantic ocean, it's like Vishnu, Mahavishnu, Kiradakshay Vishnu. So whenever you saw in some of the materials, the ocean walks brought out some of the best, times, discussion-wise. And Prabhupada would always be explaining, for example, how the material civilization had sprung up, and how the ocean had always been there, and the ocean always comes to this point, bar some tremor or an earthquake or disturbance, and the civilization comes to this point. And he was explaining this to this biker also, and it was incredible. About halfway through, the guy left and Prabhupada just didn't notice it and kept on going.